say A, and that's your final answer?
So let's get down to facts here. In the news, we've had a lot of unbelievable publicity about a new law that was passed in Georgia. The correct name of the law is the Election Integrity Act of 2021, and it's designed to protect the integrity of the vote. I regard voting as one of the most sacred rights of American citizenship, and I think it's very important that we respect that right and we do everything we can to avoid the chaos and the disgrace that were the most recent election and runoff. And so, to me, this is extremely important. And I think for all well educated Americans who are up on their facts, they would support this law if they ever get to see the true story. And that's what we're going to try and share with you today. And so, first of all, we've got the Lion Joe Biden talking about the fact that people can't get water while they're voting. Well, first of all, I've never stood in a voting line long enough to have needed a drink of water, but the law just restricts hacks and partisanship, like people running around with MAGA hats and people running around with t-shirts supporting their favorite candidate, from running around a voting line and handing out water and other goodies. It doesn't say you can't have water. In fact, it specifically says that water that is freely available, where people can step out of line and get water and get back in line, that is completely okay. So Joe's lying, as he often does. Personal opinion is that Joe Biden is suffering from something that many voters suffered from in November: Trump derangement syndrome. And old Joe has certainly had his issues, but he seems content to simply wipe out every good thing that Trump did for Americans. And this is no exception, even though it's not at the federal level, at least at the moment. And one of the things I thought was interesting is that the impact of the voter integrity law in Georgia is bipartisan. It doesn't put either party at a disadvantage. And I think that's an important consideration. I've reviewed this thing very carefully, and I'm not seeing anything that's like, gee, if I was somebody else and if I lived in Georgia, would this make me feel that it is pushing me towards one party or the other? And if anything, it made me support the Republicans simply because it's a good law and it's not racist. I find it fascinating that the party that enforced 100 years roughly of discrimination against Black Americans, the party that enforced Jim Crow, the party that kept the American military segregated until after World War II, is claiming to understand what racism is about and what might be racist and what isn't racist. And I assure you that this law is anything but racist. And in fact, there's some statistics that support what I'm saying. And one of the things that they looked at was they conducted a poll for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, a major newspaper, and they found that 74% of Georgians support photo ID requirement for voting. Of that, 63% of Black respondents supported voter ID. And the racist concept that because someone is a person of color, that they do not have ID is racism in its extreme sense. And in fact, I would say that the Democrats are practicing their own version of Jim Crow, the new version, which is talking their cronies in the press into backing them up on some of this nonsense. The voter hours are the same. An additional Saturday has been added. There are some additional restrictions for each absentee ballot. People need to request those in advance. Military, those who live overseas, people with disabilities will still be able to request an absentee ballot for an entire election cycle. Now, those who are requesting an absentee ballot for some miscellaneous reason, instead of being able to go in 180 days in advance, will now be able to go in 11 weeks in advance. To me, this is how do people know 180 days in advance that they're going to be unavailable on election day who do not fall into the prior categories that are already protected? Yeah, this is nonsense. It's time for people to stop listening to this nonsense and to say, enough, enough. But of course, we've got the chicken CEOs of companies headquartered in Georgia, like Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines, who are shaking in their boots because some idiot has said, gee, that might be racist. You shouldn't support such things in your state. Well, I'm telling you that I think those particular businesses are going to take a much bigger hit if they don't get their heads out of their respective butts and start respecting the law and try reading the law before being bullied by these racist and irrational arguments that are being made. So that's our look at the Georgia election law. And yes, I support virtually all of it, as it is important that we protect the integrity of the American vote.